So our pahrump poolfish is an endangered animal. I'm imagining all of us know what the word endangered means, but it's also an endemic animal. Anybody know what endemic means?
Unique to that area?
Exactly. You will only find this in one area. The pahrump poolfish speciates during the last ice age in a small pond in Pahrump, Nevada. It actually had two cousins. The way scientific names work, we have, generally speaking, when we talk about a name like Quercus turbulina, Quercus is the genus. All oak trees are Quercus. And then an individual species will have a unique moniker after that. This one is Impetricus latos. There were two other fish with the moniker, the genus Impetricus. They are now extinct. Its cousins are gone from planet Earth, and in the 1960s, this fish was on the same path to become extinct. A biologist recognizes this is about to happen. He actually witnessed the other two go extinct, and he decides to rescue the fish. He takes them home in a bucket, brings them back to his house, and raises them in his fish tank at home. And for about 15 years, he is the only person on planet Earth with this fish, and he is single-handedly saving that species. Eventually, by the mid-1970s, after the United States federal government passes the Endangered Species Act, money, the all-important thing to conservation, is released, and it starts being able to use this money to create restoration programs for animals like this. There's actually 200 species listed of importance that are the impetus for that law, the Endangered Species Act. The pahrump poolfish is one of those 200. This is one of the reasons why we have that law in the first place. The fish, by the 1980s, is relocated to Lake Harriet. At that time, Lake Harriet was not being used really for anything except irrigation. This area, even though it was a public park, was off limits to the public. The hiking trails we were on did not exist. And this made it a great candidate for the fish. It was a clean body of water with no public access. The fish are relocated here and they do very well. They go from a population of around 300 fish to over 60,000 individuals. Enough that the biologists who are in charge of this program, both the federal and state biologists, were on track to actually turn this species out of the endangered species classification and into threatened, basically to upgrade its status. Unfortunately, in the mid-2000s, the state park responded to a public request to open up areas of the park for recreation, opens up this lake to meet hikers, and we do not protect it with the fence that you see today. This is not an animal fence, this is a human fence. People, unfortunately, only a handful of people who, in my opinion, had they come on one of these great hikes, would have learned about Leave No Trace, did not understand the impacts of leaving their animals behind and what it would mean for all of us as a community. Animals are released in the lake, including turtles, koi fish, goldfish, crawfish, and the worst of all was a tiny little species of fish called a mosquito fish. All of these animals play an impact on this fish's life. The worst, though, is the mosquito fish. A mosquito fish is used in people's home ponds to eat mosquito larvae. So best we could figure was somebody came up here with buckets of pond water that had koi or turtles or goldfish in it, and they dumped all of the water into the lake. Fish are like insects. It doesn't take very many for them to repopulate a body of water. Soon, the mosquito fish, which had no natural predator, were eating the young poolfish larvae at about 100% success rate. What happens to any population when the children do not survive? Yeah, eventually that population goes extinct. There's no way for it to reproduce. And that's exactly what happens to our fish. That 60,000 individuals are reduced down to about 300. In March of 2017, those last 300 are captured in a live trap system, relocated to a fish hatchery in Lake Mead that's actually closed to the public, and the lake is drained. This lake is drained for 3 years straight. If you were here when it was dry, you remember that. We're lucky to say that the lake is back, and we actually have thousands of poolfish in there now. In February of 2020, the water was reintroduced, and by March of 2020, we actually put our first batch of poolfish in. And they've gone through several spawning cycles. Today at the end of the hike, we'll actually get to go along the shoreline, and we'll see some of the young fish right along the shoreline. So it's a really nice success story of conservation. So, yeah, go ahead, please. Any questions?
Do we know how it was noticed that the pahrump poolfish was being eaten?
It's a great question. We have a couple individuals at the federal and state level whose responsibility is to maintain an understanding and a population dynamics of these types of fish. One of them, Kevin, works for Nevada Division of Wildlife, and he came out here and through continual trapping efforts and observation realized that our poolfish numbers were declining steeply and our other animals were becoming more and more present. So we had a scientist, trained scientist, that came out and were able to observe it. Keep walking. So it wasn't until they drained the lake in 2017 that they began asking some more detailed questions and actually had experiments. And in 2018, in a controlled setting in the laboratory, they discovered it was the mosquito fish eating the young poolfish that had a significant impact on the population. The crawfish had a slight impact, about 10 or 15% decline when crawfish were present. When the mosquito fish were present, it was about 100% decline. Most like this allows visitors to actually see the fish, not just an artist rendering, but an actual picture of the fish. The greenery is a beautiful resource. Water. Now, starting at the ranch side, if you begin to look back at the canyon, you'll notice there's green means water in the desert. If you see lush trees and big canopies, by all means go there. You're going to find shade at the very least, if not water. All right, anybody have any questions before we start walking off this plateau? Again, I apologize for the brevity of some of this, but it's getting hot.
Keep going.
Yeah. Oh, the cholla though right here, point out since we've been talking about cholla a little bit, you'll notice on the cholla there's joints between the segments. Those are called internodal connections or internodal joints, and the node is this branch essentially. Those can abscise or they can break off. When things dry out, they become very brittle and delicate, and that's why they're called jumping. You'll brush across that and it'll pop off. And it does this for reproduction. These needles are actually modified leaves, and when they hit the ground under the right conditions, can actually metamorphosize like a caterpillar into a butterfly and go from needle to root. And it can propagate the entire plant without actually having to use flowers or seeds, which is why it jumps. That is the evolutionary adaptation. It will flower as well, but the problem with flower is it takes a resource, it takes water.
Right, I just wondered if...
Oh yeah, yep. Yeah, basically the vast majority of plants out here flower. Actually,
Yeah.
very cool, a little bit on the indigo bush right here. We have a really nice piece of sandstone here with a lot of limestone. One of the other things that we can see here is something called desert patina. It's that dark shell on the rock. And there's also another really good example of it right here on this rock. It's desert patina. We'll talk more about it when we get inside where it's nice and cold. But just something to note is how it's on the outside of the rock, but not quite on the inside. These areas where erosion has taken place. And there's large swaths of it. Those big black patches that you see on some of the
Rat or mouse scat. Or...
Go ahead. I want to do this.
Yep, that's someone's home.
Yeah, did you see the midden?
Yes. Run, taking a photo of it.
This Mojave yucca here is probably the largest one we're going to see on our tour today. It's one of our 3 yucca species. The most common and the most well-known and iconic is the Joshua tree, which is named after me.
Yes, it is.
I'm the only one that gets to use that joke. Unless your name's Joshua, then you can use the joke too.
Thanks for bringing that to us.
It's named by the Mormons. They felt that it represented the outstretched hands of Joshua praising God in the Old Testament. The Mormons name a lot of stuff out here. The Mojave yucca that we see here has left the ground and is a very large tree. Also indicates it's very old. One of the strategies here in the desert is to grow slow and to grow old. Think about the desert tortoise. How old does that desert tortoise get? Plants follow the same strategy. The third and final yucca is the banana yucca, which is actually right here next to us. It's sort of this grayish green sabered leaf. Also, it doesn't leave the ground. Notice how it doesn't have a high rise like this Mojave yucca does. The Mojave yucca, the banana yucca, and the Joshua tree all share a really amazing adaptation called adventitious cloning. Right? You might be mixing the word there. Anyway, they can clone themselves. Instead of reproducing through flowers alone, they can also create clones of their bodies, and that allows them to last longer so they can outlast droughts and hopefully get to a point where there's more water to make more seeds and more fruit. This plant we're looking at here is probably about 1,500 years in growth, which is pretty remarkable considering that our story, our European heritage here in this country only goes back like 400, 600 years, give or take. You gotta think 1492, so yeah, about 500 odd years. So it's pretty amazing to think that this was here when Columbus lands in, technically in what, so I don't want you guys to I don't want to push ourselves out of our comfort zone. So yeah, absolutely. I'm actually considering turning the group around at this point and heading back to the house. But I will leave that kind of as a group decision. Okay. I know that some of us probably can make it to the top, but I want to, as a group, prioritize everybody. So what I can do though at this point is I can describe what will happen as we go up the trail. We have just walked through the blackbrush community. We are now in a riparian zone. This is a natural meadow. This is what it looks like in the Mojave Desert when you have that natural land. This beautiful plant in front of us, the yerba manza, is really cool. If everybody takes a look at it, you'll see these large, what look like leaves at the bottom of the flower are actually not petals of a flower. They're called petioles, which is a modified leaf. The flower is actually this little white bit here, all these little tiny white single petals for different medicinal purposes, like tea, to calm indigestion or upset stomachs or GI issues, or it could have also been used as a poultice, basically mashed up into a cream and put on cuts, burns, and rashes and the sort to soothe those things. This right here next to me, coyote willow, I'm shaking it so if you want to see what it is. The coyote willow, like a lot of willows and poplar trees, actually has a aspirin-like compound in its bark, so it can be used for pain relief and for anti-inflammatory purposes. Also, is a great building resource for basket making or for other things that would have required straight and flexible pieces of wood. And then above us right here is our velvet ash tree. This velvet ash tree is a very unique plant to our park. There's not a lot of these in southern Nevada, and our park is home to the largest grove. Oh, that's shade. This is part of the largest grove in the state. This tree would have been an important resource for building materials as well as firewood for the southern Paiute. It's called the velvet ash because it has a beautiful velvety texture on the leaf. Don't worry about reaching up to touch this one. There's one that as we make our way back, you'll be able to touch the leaf, really get a feel for that texture. That cooling effect comes from the water, but it also comes from the plants. Plants, when they go through photosynthesis, creating sunlight into energy, actually release water vapor. It's part of the chemical process of photosynthesis. And when they release that water vapor, we get a swamp cooler. So you can imagine that not only is there water here that the wildlife and people can utilize, but there's shade and there's cool temperatures. These are the hot spots of biodiversity in the desert, these wetlands. It is what makes this park very important to protect. It is one of our defining features are these wetlands. It's nice just to stand in it though.
Would deer and stuff, would deer come up this high?
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely. We're in the right area now for not only our mule deer, which is our native deer, but also our bighorn sheep.
Oh yeah.
The odds of seeing a bighorn sheep are incredibly slim. I've been on this day hike, this same hike I've done 5 days a week for about 4 or 5 months throughout the winter. Never once seen a sheep. Seen a lot of deer, but never once seen a sheep. Now I know they're here, there's evidence of them, but they are very reclusive animals. They do not like people, and they're very keen on staying away from us. We do have elk in the Spring Mountain range, but not in the park boundary because we're too low in elevation. Yeah, they like the higher elevations, not the lower elevations where we are here. Cold Creek's about right for it. They're not native, interestingly enough. They're actually relocated from northern Nevada. I think they were brought here in the 40s or 50s, if I remember the wildlife history correct. All right. How's everybody feeling?
Other questions?
Yes.
These romances have red on
Yeah, I
their
noticed
leaves.
that.
What is up with that? That's the first time I've seen that.
Don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good question. Now, my guess is we're going to play armchair scientist here.
Okay.
Two things. Probably water conditions or age. So maybe it's drying out. We'll continue up that way. Again, my apologies. We're going to bypass it. I just don't want to get anybody sick or injured or tired. Yeah. Please. Yeah, I'd love to have you all come.